Welcome to Face to Face. This is a show about change and about what's next. It's a show that wants to ask questions, peel back the layers of our average everyday experience, and go beyond scratching the surface. We interview amazing people with incredible ideas and stories who have done wild, weird, and wonderful things. Remember that imagination shared creates collaboration, and collaboration creates community, and community inspires social change. I'm David Peck, and this is Face to Face. So today's interview is with Kalyanee Mam. She's a filmmaker, the director of photography on Inside Job. You need to see that film if you haven't. She was the director and the cinematographer for A River Changes Course, another brilliant film that I hope you get a chance to see. You can download it online. She's an environmentalist. She's a Buddhist. She's a thinker. She believes that we are the center of the ripple effect. She wants to talk about Cambodia and the Orang Valley and what's going on there. She's currently in Cambodia and she's making a new film, and I think you're going to want to hear what she has to say today. This is part one. She's going to come back sometime in 2015 to follow up. Don't forget to check out mindmarket.com. I write a column there, Taking It Global. I have some blogging that I'm doing on a fairly regular basis. Check out my book, Real Change is Incremental, and more about me at davidpecklive.com. I think you're going to enjoy today's interview. Stay tuned. Well, welcome to Face to Face. We have a guest coming back for the second time, and maybe this is the beginning of a several-part series. But Kalyanee Mam is here with me, and she's somewhere on the west coast, I guess, sitting out, staring out into nature. Kalyanee, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, thank you, David.
So tell us, where are you sitting, actually? You mentioned it briefly to me before we started our chat.
I'm actually on a path. It's a natural path in Sebastopol. It's a small town in West Sonoma County, and there's a pathway that links, all the little towns, throughout Sonoma, and so I'm just walking along the path.
Nice. Pat, well, you know what? And honestly, folks out there in Rabble land and in podcast land, we didn't plan that, but that's just too good. That's too good of a metaphor. What was your line? Pathway that links all the towns. I mean, it sounds to me like that's what we're going to be.
I know. I actually wish there were paths like this linking all the towns and cities. People could walk, from one city to the next, or bike or whatever. It would be so nice if we had that.
Yeah, it'd be wonderful. So Kalyanee is a filmmaker. She's most recently been traveling around and winning awards with the River Changes Course. I've seen it a couple times. If you haven't seen it, shame on you. You guys need to get out there and see the film. It's a River Changes Course online. You can download it. And Kalyanee directed and wrote the film, spent quite a bit of time in Cambodia. We're not going to talk about that today. I'm sure it's going to come up. But as a result of that film, you got into a couple other issues that sort of bubbled to the surface for you that you've been spending a lot of time thinking about, reflecting on. And it sounds like you're going through a major shift to me from what little you've been telling me. So I'm hoping we can get into that. But I'm going to lead us in with this quote here. So you and I just chatted briefly before we hit the record button. I've revisited the film Cloud Atlas, and there's a quote that several of the characters use. And here it is, quote, "Our lives are not our own. From womb to tomb, we are bound to others, past and present. And by each crime and every kindness, we birth our future." Isn't that beautiful?
That is really beautiful. Wow.
And the soundtrack in Cloud Atlas, Kalyanee, is just so marvelous.
And I want to.
You got to see it.
I know, I have to see it.
You got to see it.
Me too.
So how does that frame? That quote kind of frame what you and I were just briefly talking about before we hit record for the podcast itself, this idea of pathways and connection and spiritual reawakening. I mean, it sounds like you've been having quite a journey over the last
month. Since I have, Yeah, it's been quite a journey since we last spoke, and to be honest with you, I was, after River Changes Course, was released, and during that period, while I was making the film, it was just such a beautiful time. The production on it, I was, out on the lake in the jungles, living with the families. And I think that was what I enjoyed the most. I was connecting with the families, living with them and learning their stories. But then after River Changes Course was released, we had all this media attention, and, I was like thrown into this whirlwind of amazing things, but also a lot of confusion too, like asking myself, where am I headed? What am I doing?
Right.
What I love is telling stories, not distributing a film.
Right.
I think, I think this is the frustration that a lot of filmmakers go through, and perhaps even, all artists go through. You want to make your art, but, there's all these other things that come in the way too. But what I've realized is that, after having some time to sit and reflect and moments to be silent, what I've also realized is that there is an importance in distributing that film, and in speaking with people and connecting with people, on that level as well, and so I have been traveling with the film and talking about it, which has also helped me to understand even more the importance of telling the stories that I'm telling, because of, the situation that, Cambodia is faced with right now, and just coming back to the quote that you shared with me, it's just so relevant for me right now and for our planet, because of, all the destruction that is occurring on our planet, but also all the beauty that we should be protecting instead, and I had this beautiful, moment, when I was in Orang Valley, with, the family in Orang Valley over there. There's this woman that I met. Her name is Reen Sopsy, and she's one of the members of the indigenous people called the Chong. They live in Orang Valley, and they've been living there for 6 centuries. And I spent some time with her and her family, and they took me out, onto this river in Orang Valley, and, they were fishing, and she told me the story of her life and the importance of her community. And she said something that was really significant to me. She said that that nature is part of her, and she is part of nature. That she and nature are like one. And, when she said that, it helped me to realize, and I've always felt that way, but, it was really that experience that helped me to internalize that idea. It's not just an idea, but it's actually who we are. We are part of nature, and if we truly embrace nature and the natural world around us, and not just nature, but every single person, in this world, on this planet, if we truly embrace and love one another, then there's really no reason to destroy any of it, because we are all part of each other. And it's so interesting, because
it's amazing, Kalyanee. You sound so passionate about it, so excited about it, and it sounds so you sound really committed to it. How, I don't hear that from a lot of people. How do you think you're going to communicate that in the near future? This, or are you even really concerned about it? It sounds like you've been getting into some of those conversations with some of the people that you've been, showing the film to and distributing the film to and so on. But how do you get others excited about it? And I don't want to go cynical on you, because I'm think hopeful as well.
No, I think it's just starting to have conversations like this, and these are the kinds of conversations I'm having with a lot of people. Starting with my friends and my family. But my community, and when I'm traveling and speaking about the film, about a River Changes Course, but also my current work in Orang Valley, trying to stop a dam from being constructed in this beautiful, exquisite, natural place. This is what I'm doing. I'm trying to tell these stories so that I can help, connect people to this place. But I think what I've realized is when I talk to people is that it really starts with ourselves. It starts in our own communities. It's not just thinking about another community across the planet, but also in our own community, embracing the nature around us, and ourselves too, and our relationship with others. And once we realize that we are all one, that we are all part of one another, then it's so easy to extend that outward, and it's like a ripple effect, on the pond or something, just it's so easy to extend that outwards to everyone else. And that's what I realized about myself, it's like that ripple in the pond, that center of that ripple is me.
Right.
And, what I realized is that once I became clear about my intention, about what I want to do with my life and what I want to share with the world, it became so easy for everyone to also help me convey those messages, and it's just such a beautiful feeling, and I realized what is important to me when I went on this trip in Orang Valley. I realized that the one thing that I want to do in my life is to share the beauty of nature, and to share the stories of people who depend on nature, for their livelihood, with others, so that we can see how important, the natural world is to our lives.
So I'm kind of fascinated. Once you said something to the effect of once it became clear. How do you think you found the clarity? And obviously, assuming you've got many years to live and things will become clearer, and you'll get excited about other things along the way. But how did you find this clarity? Was it during the making of River Changes course? Was it meeting this woman?
You know what? I think this is a process that is takes years, and it's been taking me so long to get to this place. And even this current place where I'm at right now it's full of haze and confusion still, But I think that what I realized, after returning from Orang Valley and, spending time with these, beautiful people who are living this beautiful life so connected to nature, and coming back to my home, which is also in the redwood trees, and also connected to nature, I realized that this is really the most important thing that any of us could do right now. The only thing we can do, I feel, the most important thing we can do right now is to protect our homes, and our home is our planet and, the natural world around us. And if we don't protect that, then what do we have to live in? What do we have to actually call our home? And, once I realized that, that it just became clear to me that that's what I needed to do, was to share that message with others. And I don't know if there's like a moment where it happened, but I know that I love to meditate, right. And I love to hike. I do a lot of hiking out in nature, and what I've seen, is that I just see the world, in everything around me, and all of the plants and the animals, I just see as, part of me, and every person that I come in contact with, that I'm with, I also view as part of me too. And, once I embrace that feeling, and I don't want to say it's an idea, because it's a feeling and it's an emotion. And once I feel it and I felt it, then it just became so natural, for me to do this, now very soon I'm going to be going back to Cambodia and telling more stories, and hopefully conveying more messages.
Sounds like there was a lot of, or there has been a lot of truth for you in these feelings and emotions. And typically, the scientists in the world, the rationalists, would say, oh, well, there's no truth there, right? I mean, this is feeling, this is emotion, this is spiritual, it's intuitive, Kalyanee. What are you talking about? How could you have, found yourself there? But it seems to me that that's really where the real work is being done, I think. And yet we have this culture, at least here in the Western world, and probably most of the world, that seems to be mostly interested in 2 + 2 = 4.
It's so interesting that you say that. I'm so glad you said that, because I actually have been, ever since I was a kid, I was really interested in astronomy and the universe and the study of, of nature and plants and animals. And what I've learned is that actually scientists embrace spirituality more than anyone else, because they understand that there's a limit to science. They understand that there's a limit to rationality. But also that there's really a space beyond us that we can't even comprehend yet. Of course, we should continue to ask questions and answer them, rationally and with science and physics and, mathematics. But there is always a limit to what our understanding can be.
Right.
And what I've learned more than anything is actually that we are all connected to each other, and it's not just a spiritual thing, it's actually a scientific thing. You know, we come from the stars. You know, we come from the earth, and we come from the molecules and atoms that make us who we are, and we share those atoms and molecules with every living being on the planet. You know, so it's actually scientific that we are all connected.
Well,
it's not just a hypothesis.
Yeah. Well, it sounds to me. I mean, you're talking about humility there. I think, right? And almost sounds to me like more of a relationship with the universe. Than we're willing to adhere to. So So I've been reading a lot of a French philosopher by the name of Levinas, and he says, a Jewish French existentialist, and he said, you know, after the 20th century, I mean, philosophy has failed, religion has failed because, you know, essentially we've murdered 100 million people in the 20th century.
Yeah.
You know, the Khmer Rouge, the Nazis, the communists, and so on. Now what? You know, so we're screwed basically. And what he says is that we have to start, if we want any kind of an ethics. He doesn't even like the notion of ethics actually, but what he says is, as soon as you see somebody else, as soon as you see another face, you have to presuppose the notion that there is no way that you can kill them. So thou shalt not kill. So he takes this Old Testament biblical notion, thou shalt not kill. But that has to be your starting point. Well, it almost sounds to me like you are suggesting, and I think you're onto something here, that if we start with this notion that we're all connected, that we are all in this together, now what?
Exactly. Maybe, you know, I mean, I would go even beyond him and say that, you know, it's not like a commandment that you just repeat to yourself and try to follow. You know, it's not a commandment, actually. It's a innate feeling, and I won't even say it's knowledge or belief either. It's just knowing that you are intrinsically connected to everything around you. And if that is the case, then if you destroy what is around you, you are destroying yourself, because everything, all nature is an extension of you. And so if you really believe that, then it's not even a philosophy, it's not even a science, it's not even a religion, you know, it's just how things are.
It's just the way it is, yeah.
It's just the way it is. And, you know, and I think that, you know, maybe for me, science and Buddhism probably comes closest to what I'm feeling right now. However, you know, I think that it even goes beyond anything that we could, you know, put a finger on. You know, and say, you know, this is a belief. I think it's just nature. Nature, for me, is actually, you know, it's
Yeah, sounding a bit... Motivation.
Hello?
Oh, did
I think I lost you a little bit, yeah.
Oh, you back?
Oh, yes, I'm back.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, good. Good, but I think that, you know, all the wonderful things that motivational speakers tell us, or the books that we read about how you need to get out of bed in the morning. You know, I remember reading a book on Buddhism. You know, stick a note up, or a picture of a smiling face above your bed, so that when the first thing you get out of bed on the you know, that whole notion of a right foot changes the world. But if we were to get out of bed thinking, hang on a second, I'm connected, we're all in this together. Everything I do kind of, you know, my mom used to have this Post-it note before Post-it notes were made on the fridge that said, everything we do affects someone else. And as crazy as it sounds, I think that had an impact on me. And I think that if we all got out of bed, think of, I mean, wouldn't it be a different world? I mean, it sounds kind of corny, but isn't that going to change the way I behave towards you,
definitely. And I think if that's what we need in order to get out of bed and do the right things, then we should be doing it.
Yes.
You know, I think we definitely should be doing that. But, you know, I think it has to go deeper even than that. It's just that we have to internalize it so that it's part of who we are.
Yes.
And, you know, what I've read is that the Aboriginal people, you know, of Australia, they actually believe that there's no idea of existence. You know, there's no idea of existing just as me or you or I.
Right.
You know, actually we exist only in relation to something else.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and that's so amazing.
Yeah, well,
you know, so they
I mean, that's the basis of to some degree of modern existentialism. You know, you can't know yourself unless you are in relationship to others.
Yes,
right?
Yeah. And if we view the world that way, if we view the world, you know, ourselves in relation to something else, you know, then we can see that connectedness. And then we understand that, you know, we can't destroy what is connected to us.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, so like, you know, a tree isn't a tree, you know. It's not just a tree. It's a tree that exists in the forest.
Right.
You know, or like the fish, you know, in the river. It's not just a fish. There's a fish swimming in the river.
Sure.
So the fish can't exist outside of that river.
Right.
You know, or it can't exist outside of the ocean. And if it can't exist out of the ocean, then we need to preserve the ocean. We need to protect the ocean. We need to protect the forest in order to protect the tree. And we need to protect the forest and the oceans in order to protect us, because we exist in relation to all of that. But what you know, the way that we've been perceiving the world so far is that we're trying to control everything around us. We don't see ourselves as in relation to anything else. We perceive ourselves as separate from nature, and what we are trying to do is to control nature and to exploit nature for our own survival. But the most wonderful thing is that by living in harmony with nature, we can actually survive even more, you know, beautifully than if we try to exploit it.
So how does the I was going to go for the cheap laugh on capitalism, but how does the obscene capitalist live in this world when they say, well, we've got to create wealth, we got to create more wealth, and that really has to be connected back to the individual, to that person who is incentivized to change their world, to work harder, to be entrepreneurial, and so on. All the things that I would think you want most Cambodians to do for themselves.
I mean, I think the correct incentive is the incentive that, you know, the indigenous people of Orang Valley have to protect their natural world. Their incentive is that I want to protect the fish and the animals and the forest because I am part of that forest. You know, I am part of the fish and the animals, and they are part of me. If I destroy it, then I destroy myself. I think that is the correct incentive, not, oh, I'm going to wake up in the morning and I'm going to go destroy the forest because that will make money for me and bring wealth, you know, to me and my family. You know, we have to destroy those boundaries, you know, and embrace the world as a more as an ecology, you know, in which, you know, we're all dependent on one another. You know, and if we destroy part of that ecology, then we are destroying ourselves.
Have we had,
you know, and that capitalist way of looking at the world, which is, I believe, very destructive, you know, and actually very anti-us, you know, anti-world. You know, I think that needs to, you know, we need to change that. I mean, that is a way of thinking that, you know, it's lasted us this long, but it's not going to last us for much longer because of the destruction that is, you know, wreaking, you know, on the planet.
Well, you know, to some degree, I think that's partially, you know, the danger of some of that thinking is that the free marketer will say, well, we are so ingenious as a race, we'll eventually figure out how to get our way out of X, Y, and Z because somebody will be entrepreneurial enough to come up with a solution. So electric cars are the answer to the oil problem, and you know, and I'm not convinced we're going to be able to be so nuanced in the future. That's the sense I get. I mean, maybe you know. So have we actually really figured out every problem? Well, no, I don't think so. And where are we going to wind up, you know, in 10, 15, 20, 100 years? So it's I mean, you don't want us to all live in tents, do you? Is that
No, definitely not. And this is what I say to people. I don't want us to go back, you know, to where we were, you know, 6 centuries ago. Definitely not. You know, I don't think that's the answer. However, technology will and can enable us to live a life in harmony with nature if we will only embrace it, you know, with the right intention, you know, but it has to start with the right philosophy first and the right way of, the right perception of the world.
Right.
Then, if our goal is to protect the planet and do everything we can to live in harmony with nature, then the technology that we will use, will enable that goal, will further that goal.
So are you...
And will allow us to live, very wonderful lives, I think, luxurious lives, the lives that we're living now, except, we won't be destroying, the wonderful things around us. The things that...
Some of these things are so arbitrary, aren't they? I mean, who says that you need to work X amount of hours a week? Who says that you need so many degrees? Who
Exactly.
I was having breakfast with a friend of mine yesterday. He's an artist. He's struggling to make ends meet from time to time, doing well, others, and so on. And we talked a little bit about and I'm now a free agent again. I'm kind of on my own and looking for work here and there and getting contracts and so on. But what this freedom is allowing is more time with my family. Work from home, a more relaxed atmosphere. Sure, there's more stresses elsewhere, but it's about, I hate, you know what, Kalyanee, I don't like the word balance, actually. I was going to say there's more balance there. I get where we're going with balance, but I want a little more, I want a little more tension than that.
Yes. Actually, it needs to be a little bit more extreme than that.
Yeah.
Because of where we are currently. That the balance actually doesn't tip us back, to a prosperous world. It's actually, just taking us back to maybe the 50s or 60s or something like that. Yeah.
Well, I guess my point is, Jay and I chatting yesterday, we didn't land on it necessarily, but it was kind of, well, everything comes with a cost. So, maybe we're not making the six-figure salaries, but, we're taking back in another way. We're able to put more time into our relationships. We're able, I wouldn't have been having breakfast with them yesterday morning if I was working for a firm 60 hours a week, right?
Exactly.
It just wouldn't have happened.
I understand, the cost to everything. As a filmmaker myself, I'm not making any money at all. Actually, I have no income.
Sorry for laughing.
Oh, no. You can laugh all you want because it's true. No, I'm not making anything. And I have, if you talk about my life monetarily, I have a very impoverished life. But if you talk about the experiences that I have and, the connection that I have with the natural world around me and the people around me, I would say that I have one of the wealthiest lives I've ever encountered, because every day I can take a walk, I can spend, moments, staring at the trees, or walking, on a path or looking at the ferns and admiring, the forest. And then, next month I'm going to Cambodia and I'm going to live with, a family in a rain valley and learn about their way of life and go mushroom foraging with them and sleep, on the river and observing wild crocodiles. In so many ways, I feel like I have a very enriching life. Yeah.
So
but I also understand that there are costs to that and that I can't afford certain things that people have. I don't have a car.
Sure.
I walk, I take public transportation. I don't have a big house. We have a very small, but it's good enough for us, and we eat, good food and cook at home all the time, and so in many ways, those things help us appreciate the life that we have.
So you're sounding to me like you're describing the life of an artist, which we both know you are, but it doesn't sound like the life, of my next door neighbor or my friend who's a dentist or my other friend who's an optometrist. And I'm not saying one's better than the other necessarily, but it is that. Do you think that kind of a lifestyle is going to be, not, I was going to say required, wrong word, but do you think more of us are going to have to start living life like that in order for us to make more sense of where we're heading?
Yeah, no, I don't think it's even about trying to protect the planet or anything. I think it's not even as far-reaching as that. I think we should live, all of us, simpler lives just to protect ourselves. So that we can breathe, and we can spend time with our families and loved ones, so that we can actually live rich and fulfilling lives. and I'm not saying it's the fault of the individual either. I know that the system, has been built to the point where, people are controlled, by large companies. Their daily lives are controlled. Their time is controlled. They have to work 60, 70 hours in order to feed their families.
Right.
In order to pay off their loans, in order to pay for health care, in order to afford all the things that we need, to live life in this, modernized world. But I think that right now, more than ever, I think it's time to reclaim, our lives again. And to I would even say question or even protest, the way that we're living life right now, or the way that we are being forced to live our lives. We can't, I don't think it's sustainable for all of us. People are getting sick, I think, from just working too hard.
Yeah.
Working so hard, but not for anything, except money.
A friend of mine years ago, he was a ventriloquist, older guy, crazy nut. This guy, Gene Sneed was his name, and he said he wanted to write a book called "When Does the Living Start?" And I wonder, he was a guy who sat on the sidelines for the most part. I mean, he performed from time to time, but he didn't do the 9-to-5 thing, but he felt, even in his own life, we're just so consumed by what appears to be insignificant details on some level, and we're constantly, maybe, another example of this. I remember a friend of mine saying for many years he had a high-level VP job with a large communication company here in Toronto, and every time I spoke to him, Kalyanee, he would say, things are slowing down a little bit, but the implication was that every time I talked to him, things were just crazy, right? Oh yeah, putting in 60, 70 hour weeks, but you know what, David? I think things are slowing down, and it's just, you know what I mean? It's just like, it's all just whizzing by. All whizzing by. Just in the last couple of weeks, I don't know if it's because we got Christmas coming in the next couple of days, but people are saying stuff like, "Oh, can you believe it's going to be Christmas again on Thursday? Wow, this year's gone really fast."
I know. I think we're all saying that.
Everyone's saying that. So now is the time, right? I mean, now is the time. It seems to me to peel back some of those layers and say maybe there is another way. Maybe there are other questions we need to be asking.
Yeah. And even if it just takes one step, I think every step counts. You say peeling the layer. I mean, the first thing that we can do is just say, when someone asks us, "Do you have time to talk?" Say yes.
Right. Good.
Or
it's good.
Can you work on this project? Say no. And I think every action that we take, and every response that we make to the things that we encounter in our lives makes a difference. Towards peeling that layer. And doing the stuff that we should really care about. Which is taking a walk out. With nature.
Have you? So you must know people who you're standing on the outside, and they'll say things like, "Oh, wow, we're having trouble making ends meet," or I can't really take the time off right now to go away because I'm, in the middle of this project or whatever. And then you stand back and you kind of do the assessment on the drive home, and you go, "Hang on, that's an $800,000 house." There's two people are working. They're consistently purchasing new toys for their children that they don't really seem to need, et cetera. How do you break through that? Like, not even I don't mean in a preaching to the unconverted way, but even in your own life. If you're in the middle of it, how do you see it? Like, you talked to me a little bit before we hit record on today's interview. You talked about this spiritual awakening. Tell me a bit more about that. I mean, again, has that been more of a process for you, do you think, or?
Yeah, no, it's definitely a process. And it took me a long time to realize, what's important to me. But it's a process of asking questions every single day. Like, should I be doing this? Why am I doing this? Why is it important? And, is it helping me to, I don't know, to bringing me closer to what I think is important in my life. So I think asking those questions on a daily level is so essential. But what I find, and this is why I don't judge anyone, and I don't, say that I have the answers. I don't.
Right.
But I do know that if we don't ask our questions of ourselves every day, that we may lose that opportunity to answer those questions. And it's those answers that I think are the most significant. That will help us to lead more lives that are in tune with ourselves. Whatever that may be. For me, it's being close to nature. For other people, maybe dancing. It may be, working in a school, maybe working in a hospital, or whatever the case may be. We have different passions, but I think constantly reflecting and asking ourselves questions, whether or not what we're doing is important. I think that is something that is really critical that we should all be doing more of.
So how does somebody who's a garbage man, how does a construction worker, how does an economist, how does somebody who's doing a job that is so, what appears to be fundamentally focused around, a particular project, or maybe isn't necessarily connected to others. You can sort of get a sense for, if you're a teacher,
But what the thing is, David, I don't know, when you said a person who's collecting, I actually think they're one of the most important people on the planet. An economist can be a really important person too.
Yeah.
I think.
They're not that important, Kalyanee.
But every single one of us, we are important.
Yeah.
We're important in the fact that we can contribute in positive ways to our communities.
Yeah.
Or, we can actually contribute in a positive way to the life of a person we love. It doesn't really matter. I think, I don't even see people as part of their profession. I just see people as people, and how we, again, ask questions and live our lives. It really depends on our intention.
I love what you said about just seeing people as people, and I think that's what Emmanuel Levinas was trying to get to when he said, you see a face, you say to yourself, I can't kill that person. But because the moment you start to say, well, that person's an economist, or that person's
exactly. You're labeling people.
You're labeling them, and he would argue you're objectifying them.
Exactly.
And now things can change, and in a really horrific way, as the 20th century told us.
Oh my God, I think that is actually what led us to the problem that we're living now. Is that there's this innate sensibility in ourselves to categorize things.
Right.
It's part of our survival technique. In
in
order to survive, we need to categorize the plants and animals and the natural world around us, and so that we know what is dangerous and what is not. But I think now we don't need that survival technique anymore.
Right.
We don't live in a barbaric world, the wilderness. But we actually know many things, and this knowledge is actually empowering us to see the world more connected.
Right.
And so it's not really necessary for us to label things as the other anymore, or as, evil and harmful, or, and I think we don't need so much anymore to put things in strict categories. I think more now we're in a position where we need to see more the connectedness, and the flow of all beings, with everything.
And to celebrate difference, I think. Would you?
Yes,
exactly.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because I think this I don't know, this desire, it seems to all be the same. Even though if you were to quiz somebody on that, are you trying to be the same as your neighbor? Or are you trying to be the same as the person you were? They would probably say no. They would probably logically say no. What, are you crazy? But the trap of everyday life, or at least that consumeristic kind of materialistic everyday life, is just it's hypnotic, and it has this ability, I think, to consume us.
Yeah. No, it is hypnotic, and I think that's because we've accepted everything as habit. Our way of life has become so habitual that, again, like what I said before, we're no longer questioning things. We're just accepting it as the way things are.
One of the sayings, I can't stand the most is the phrase, "It is what it is." It actually bothers me because there's this negative edge to it. First of all, it's like, and it's very fatalistic. Well, it's just the way it's always been, so therefore, right? And why should we actually try to fight harder to break out of that, tradition or that framework or whatever the case might be? And no, I think you're absolutely right about the whole question thing. Asking, you can tell a lot about somebody by the nature of the questions they ask, it seems to me. And we just, I don't know. So tell me how you do that, though. I mean, everything you've talked about is, in my mind, relational. You've talked about relationships. You've talked about people. You've talked about nature. You've talked about, economists, right? This is all of this stuff is grounded in a relationship of one kind or another. Don't we need to surround ourselves with people who, I guess, who we can challenge, but who are also challenging and feeding into us? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't have any clear-cut answers to anything. I don't really think that there's one thing that you can do to, to achieve consciousness or, to, educate yourself. We all have so many various ways, again, celebration of differences.
Yeah, sure.
We have so many ways to approach life and to approach questions. There's really no clear-cut way. But for me, at least, I can say just to myself that the way that I've, been living my life and the way that I think that it's right for me is to embrace everything, and to love everything and to be as compassionate as I can towards everything around me, even people, who may have different, viewpoints. But, there's actually, even though there's differences, I see that there's so many similarities too.
Right. Sure, of course there is. Yeah.
We may perceive differences because that is the way that we have, been programmed, to survive, in this world. But actually, there's so many similarities between us, and seeing those similarities, it just strikes me as like one of the most miraculous things, we have.
So, tell me. So you're heading to Cambodia in less than a couple of weeks, by the sounds of it. The day after your birthday.
Yes.
Very nice. Very nice gift.
It is a gift.
So you're going to live with a family. What's next? You're making some new Cambodian films. Oh, and you know what? Before we wrap up, too, I want you to tell me a little bit about, where you think you're heading. Did making a River Changes course sort of further cement your continued interest and love and passion for the people of Cambodia?
Yes, definitely. So I was, it was like I said before. It's really, after I released the River Changes course, it was a pretty difficult time, asking myself, what I want to do with my life, and how I want to express myself as, as an artist, and, where's my voice. And actually, to be honest with you, I was uncertain about, working in Cambodia again.
Right.
I knew that I wanted to work on, issues related to nature and to the environment, but I was uncertain about Cambodia because I didn't want to be labeled, as like Cambodian filmmaker, because I have so many interests in so many different things. But then what I realized, too, was that I don't need to worry about that. I shouldn't worry about that because whatever I do, the passion will be seen, and all my favorite writers, in the world, like, Haruki Murakami or Yukio Mishima or Milan Kundera, Gabriel Garcia Marquez or Toni Morrison, one of my favorite writers. They've always focused on what they're passionate about.
Right.
And they've always, even if they're writing from the perspective of a country like Japan or Czechoslovakia or Colombia or America, on the, American South, it's even though it's from that perspective, the stories that they tell are so particular that they become universal. And what I realized is that I can still, make films about Cambodia, but the films that I make are going to be so particular and so detailed and so beautiful that anybody, anywhere in the world can connect to these stories.
Yeah.
Because they are talking about the essential things in life, about love and meaning and life and questions and where we belong on this planet and the world. Those questions I think are universal. But, telling specific stories is what we need to do more of. Not universal stories. We can't tell universal stories.
Right.
We can only tell stories from our experience.
Yeah.
And so coming to that understanding really helps me a lot, to shape, my own understanding of myself and what I want to do, and where my passion is. And yes, it's still Cambodia, and it's also, other countries in Southeast Asia, but Cambodia will always be, part of me because that's where I come from. That's my homeland. That's my home country. And there's so many things that are happening in Cambodia right now that just tears my heart, and I can't imagine staying away, from Cambodia until we can do something about what's happening there, until I can help the people in the Ring Valley, to stop this dam from happening. I can help people tell their stories and stop the destruction of the forest, until I can, help the garment factory workers and give voice to their stories. I don't think I can stay away.
Right. It sounds like a pretty intense commitment on your part.
Yeah, but you know what? Like you said,
I can hear that. Yeah,
it's about balance.
Yeah,
it's not about balance. For me, I've never achieved balance in my life. Everything that I've ever done has always been to the extreme.
Right.
Like I stay up all night, or like I wake up late, or I go to Cambodia for 2 months to 5 months away from my family, away from my loved ones, or I, go next year. I'm planning to do a walk, through on the John Muir Trail for 250 miles.
Wow.
So like all these things are pretty extreme.
Yeah.
And I think for me, at least, that's the only way that I can live, to feel things, in the extreme. And I actually just want to have one story to share with you.
Yeah, please.
A few weeks ago, a friend of mine came to visit, and, she lives in San Francisco, and, it's kind of far. It's like an hour and a half to get to our place. And, but she came anyway, because she knew that, this was important to her, to have time to spend with me and also be out in nature. So we took this walk, and it was like a day before the storm here. The storm hit, this area in Sonoma. And we went on this walk at Willow Creek. It's one of my favorite hikes here. And, the storm was coming in. It was raining really hard, and the wind was blowing, all around us. And we stood in this middle of this kind of like, it's on a hill, but it's kind of still like a valley. You see like trees on both sides, swinging and swaying back and forth. Mm-hmm. And the breeze is like blowing through the trees. And the wind is, blowing us, and like the raindrops are hitting against our face. And I held out my hand, and I felt so like at home, and so rejuvenated and invigorated. Like I felt the coldness and the wetness on my skin, and I could hear the wind, blowing, and I felt alive.
Right.
I felt like, oh my God, this is life. We need to touch and feel things. We need to hear the wind around us, and we need to feel the coldness on our skin. And that, to me, is life. We have lost the feeling. We've lost the sounds. We don't really take time to hear things anymore, to hear the wind blowing in the trees, to hear the differences in the reverberations in the trees, or to like feel that wetness on our skin. And that is, I feel that, we need to bring those emotions and those feelings back to our life again, in order to really truly feel, connected, to this world and to nature. but yeah, that moment was just so amazing
Beautiful.
to me, and I wish I could have shared that moment with everyone in the world. You know,
well, and especially as
that's what we need.
a filmmaker too, it must have been a little bit frustrating, I would think, wanting to would a sense that you wanted to sort of capture that in a way that, you know, I don't know. I guess I'm asking a bigger question about being able to represent that kind of thing. You know, is a picture worth 1,000 words? Is really the question I'm asking you.
No, you know, at that moment, it didn't need to be captured.
It didn't need to be captured.
Yeah.
Nice.
It didn't need. I just needed to be there and feel it, and then share this moment with you now.
Yeah. Right.
You know,
sure.
and share it with friends.
I love what you've said about we don't need to tell stories about universals. We got to tell stories about particulars, and it's through universals come out of that. It's beautiful, wonderful. So I'm going to close with a quote here from T.S. Eliot, and he writes in the choruses from The Rock. He talks about endless and the endless cycle of idea and action, endless invention. Endless experiment brings knowledge of motion, but not of stillness, knowledge of speech, but not of silence. And then he goes on to ask a little later in the poem, where is the life we have lost in living? Where is the wisdom we have lost in knowledge? Where is the knowledge we have lost in information? Is that not
That's amazing.
Isn't
that's
that amazing?
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's exactly what you've been talking about here today. I think.
Yeah.
Listen,
thank you for sharing that with me. I love it.
Oh, you're welcome.
Email that to me.
I will. Are you
my gosh.
Are you going to join me again when you get back from Cambodia?
Yes,
Maybe we can talk
definitely. Yeah, let's do that. I would love to share this in my experience and share with you.
That's awesome. Thanks so much again for chatting
Of course,
today.
David.